Patrick Findaro, co-founder at Vetted Biz. Excited to have on Jeff and Nuri, former franchisees of Massage Envy. So maybe one of you could take the lead and just give a little context how you found out about Massage Envy. What was your decision making in terms of deciding on a Massage Envy franchise, potentially looking at other opportunities as well, or if it was always Massage Envy?
So the two families have been in business for probably 20 plus years. We've operated stuff within the medical space. We had sleep diagnostic centers. And then we decided that with that expertise, we would go into still managing clinics, but maybe within wellness and beauty. And so initially, we looked at a number of different franchises. This one seemed to hit the mark because you had the approach where you have aesthetics, skincare, and likewise you have well-being with massage and the ability, like I say, wellness. You can deal with athletes, arthritis, all kinds of things. We already have experience in managing people in terms of providing services. And so this looked like initially a profitable franchise. So we came to it with that business expertise and with a fair amount of capital.
So you had sufficient capital, you had management experience, you knew how to manage people, you knew how to have a retail business, negotiate leases and everything.
Correct.
What was the process with Massage Envy? Were you working with a franchise broker? Did you reach out to them directly?
So there was a franchise broker. He's third party. Basically, he's compensated when he sells units. They put us on a lot of, quote, FAM calls, which means get familiar with the model, where they would have existing franchisees talk. Everything was pretty glowing. I think initially I came across it in either a Franchise 500 magazine or something similar, and they showcased a veteran who I think in 2008, 2010 was looking around, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, he owned 10 of these things, and he was doing really well. But that was then. When we went in, the numbers had completely changed, and that was the problem.
And was the franchisor handpicking the franchisees that would essentially validate what the franchisor was saying, or were there some franchisees that weren't doing as well that you also spoke to?
As far as I know, everybody was handpicked for the call. One of them who was handpicked for the call was a very successful operator in the Chicago area, and eventually, within about a year after the call, he was out of the business, and he already sold his clinics and moved on. So the information that we got was basically, cherry-picked. I don't know how we could have been more zealous. I guess there's always a way you could be more zealous in trying to vet something. But we looked at the FDD, we looked at the numbers, we spoke to operators, but the numbers that are so glowing were based on numbers from 2010 and 2011. And that's, in fact, when the model was making a lot of money. Subsequently, with the new equity group, a lot of the profit was taken out of it. Most of the profit was taken out of it.
I saw the income statement recently. It's like the profit margin. I saw the income statement recently of Massage Envy in the most recent FDD, and they're making over, I believe it was an over 50% operating profit, the franchisor, which usually you don't see 50% profit margin unless it's like a monopoly industry. Tech and financial firms are operating 25, 30%. So 50%, usually there's something going on there that they have some serious advantage. And it seems like in this case, they're not passing through a lot of that money to the franchisees. And whether it's through rebates or other means, essentially that money is not flowing down to the franchisees' wallets.
Well, it's the franchisees. Sorry for interrupting, but it's the franchisees' money is where they're making their profit. So they're not giving it to the franchisees because they took it from the franchisees. And the model was very simple. When there was new ownership and the private equity firm took over, they changed things dramatically so that we were just money was being sucked out. And I would tell the RD, like, when do we make any money here? Because everything was paying them. We had to buy the same amount of merchandise. It didn't matter what it is. and they were constantly changing and adding. But it didn't
So it
matter
sounds
if
like
we
there
were a
were
brand new clinic and we weren't profitable versus a clinic that had been around 10 years, we still had to buy the same amount.
And there was like a forced shipment of retail product, and you had to buy X amount of skin product. You had to buy X amount of Murad. You had to buy X amount of Jan Marini. You had to buy X amount of, and these are all, I'm not in any way knocking the brands. The brands are in themselves quite good, those individual aesthetic skin brands. But the fact that we all of a sudden had an ACH taken out of our account and this product shipped to us, certainly, and the individual franchisee should make the decision. But I want to get back to your point about it, which is a very good point. The franchisor ideally should be partners with the franchisee and not adversarial. So that if they're making that kind of money, it's because they're either getting a lot of referrals or the savings that they have been negotiating because of the bulk purchase is not being passed along.
Correct.
One of the, I think, the intrinsic qualities of franchising is that you want to benefit from muscle power. In other words, I can buy X amount of product at 100 cents on the dollar, but now if I partner with you and you and you and you, I ought to be able to go to that same vendor and say, now we want to buy it at 80 cents on the dollar because we're giving you more.
It's one of the biggest lies I see franchise development people spreading, that as a franchisee, you're going to have reduced costs.
Right.
That might be true that the costs are reduced, but it's a scale where you have Subway that actually has a co-op and the franchisees negotiate the terms directly with the suppliers, and it's really a reduced cost.
Right.
And then you have some franchisors that will reduce costs and pass all the savings to franchisees. You have other ones that they reduce costs and they get some rebates. And then you have other ones. I interviewed a franchisee of cell phone repair where he's paying more than the wholesale rate if he just went to the general market. So you have reduced costs because of the collective purchasing power, but whether the franchisee fully benefits from that or if it's the franchisor that fully benefits, it seems like a scale. And sadly, for the experience you had with Massage Envy, it seems like it was more towards the franchisor extracting that benefit of the collective purchasing power.
Well, that was actually very true. And even in one product that was introduced later on, it was called the Hypervolt. It was like a massage gun. We were paying anywhere from $295 to $345 as our wholesale costs. And then I remember going to Gold's Gym, seeing it on the back of the wall at the price that I was paying for it wholesale. Now, Gold's Gym is not selling something. They're not buying something at $295 only to turn around and sell it at $295.
No. Well, what's generally a 40% markup?
I don't know. Yeah, but that would be general. But certainly, we're paying something retail. And we bought, I think, one or two at the conference, the annual conference. And they said, no, that's not enough. You need 3 here. You need 3 here. But throughout the chain, they're telling each clinic, you need 3. You need 3. We're mandating that you need whatever it was, might be 4. But why? So it's like, they weren't even in use every day, every hour. Like, one is sufficient depending on what a client's needs are. But that's just a small example. I maybe want to get to some like broad statements, and then I can back them up and you'll see where I'm going. In the last 5 years in Los Angeles, more than 7 or 8 clinics I know personally opened and closed. Each of those clinics cost no less than $750,000. All right. You multiply that times 7 or 8, you're looking at close to $6 million or more.
Serious capital.
Those things close without any buyers. And if one of them was purchased, they were purchased for maybe 10 cents on a dollar, if that. So in our particular area, we had 3 units: West Hollywood, Hollywood, Los Feliz. All 3 of those units are closed today. They were all within about 1.5 miles of each other. They're all poaching each other's clients and each other's service providers. There's a shortage of massage therapists. And so now basically, even though we're friendly, quote, we're all fighting for that same client and the same dollar. But meanwhile, we're all paying very expensive real estate. So I don't know why And then, oh, by the way, there's something called, they said, well, don't worry, we did the demographics and your area will support it. And here's where we were remiss, among other things. And I was saying, we obviously have some blame in it. We're not total victims. If maybe we would have had a third party, such as it's not a shameless plug, but if we would have had a third party that might have given us some kind of more objective feedback, we would have had more information. But they said there was a company that does demographic studies, and they said, don't worry, your area will support it. And Hollywood and Vine sounds like, wow, like its own entity. People come to Hollywood and Vine to look at the stars on the sidewalks, but they don't walk into our clinic to get massages. They're taking pictures of the stars,
It sounds like someone's going to that site not to get a massage, and they're going for the tourist attraction, or they're going for the nightlife,
right. Exactly,
and other activities.
I'd like to make a comment though, because my husband said that maybe we are to blame and we were remiss. I disagree with that. I think we are completely blameless. Okay. I think that the people who lost their clinics, their livelihoods, this was supposed to be like a retirement business. People put their life savings. There were people absolutely destroyed. There is a franchisee who actually committed suicide up in the Pacific Northwest, I believe. I don't know where. But there's another one. I mean, we survived. We were lucky for a lot of different reasons. We were hit very, very hard. But we saw people's they were destroyed. Literally destroyed.
I've heard of so many divorces when the franchise goes under that it's basically a ripple effect, and it causes so much strain in the marriage, and there's a divorce.
Well, my husband unfortunately doesn't like to talk about it, but when we were dealing with one of their fraudulent vendors, really fraudulent because...
And they are, and we'll talk about that as well.
He had a major heart attack, and we just got very lucky that we were able to get him care within 2 hours, but I wouldn't have a husband here today. It is that stressful, number one. And number two, you have Wells Fargo at the conferences. You have all kinds of
Bank of America. These are
Bank of America.
These are the SBA lenders.
It's like social proof that it's going well, and that there's all these other third party validators.
I mean, we're relying on professionals. We have a franchisor, this poor lady. She went to the top professional accountants, lawyers, everything to check this. We went to lawyers to check it. So it's not like we do our due diligence, but I will tell you this. Nobody would expect that a multi-billion-dollar corporation could be this aggressive, abusive, and exploitive to such a degree.
Right.
It sounds like
everything to be perfect, but you do expect, if not even ethics, but just legalities. I mean, we couldn't even believe that. Everybody was just horrified by the things that they were doing. And then we would just say, how is this even legal? We did reach out to senators. We did reach out to the Federal Trade Commission. The people in the government know. They know that they are doing things that are fraudulent, illegal, and they use bully tactics. And I have nothing good to say about them, with the exception of one thing, and that is the association that is headed by one of the franchisors who actually displayed all of the talent and abilities that would be needed for a network to actually do things.
He acted as an advocate for the franchisees.
And they fought him every step of the way.
He was able to get some, but this is after we were at the tail end and we were leaving. But I do want to talk about, when my wife mentioned the two, and she has some really good points. She talked about Bank of America. She talked about Wells Fargo. These and other lenders come to the annual conference, and they're saying, Massage Envy, they are on our tier AAA list. And of course, when we met them in 2015 and 16, they're using 2010 and 11. I talked to them later on, and both B of A and Wells Fargo said, we're not doing loans anymore. If we can avoid it, we don't want to do loans, and they're certainly not on our top tier list. So things have changed when they finally saw the writing on the wall. There was another, I know you want to say something, but there was a gal, and our hearts went out to her. She opened it right around the same time we were in San Pedro. She was an elderly woman. She put her life savings in it.
So she probably rolled over like her retirement savings in this franchise, like a 401k rollover.
And within a year, she was bankrupt. and she was working a desk job or a sales job at Talbot's, probably earning $12 to $15 an hour. She did everything by the book, and she followed the model, but it's like the break even initially we were told would be 7 to 9 months. Obviously, I don't think any of those clinics, the new ones, reached the break even after 2 to 3 years. But it was just a miserable experience.
And they don't want to hear of it
right.
in corporate. If their attitude is, if it's not succeeding, we're bad operators.
Yeah, that's the fallback. Bad operators.
It's like we've gone our whole life.
But if you follow what they say and it's documented, it's like it should be foolproof that you follow and execute their plan and you succeed in the franchise.
Well, that's what they said. They lied. They lied time and time again. And I'm sure at one point it was a really great model, but the new CEO even told one of the franchisees, he said, "You guys are just making too much money." Well, he ended that.
Do you think a big thing was like the change of ownership, and that kind of changed the values and the executive team?
Because the business model, there was no business model. The business model was basically, where can we tap the franchisee as a revenue stream? So every transaction they took and they never gave. So if we had faulty gift cards transactions where we were, because they had a very bad point of sale system, we would have a lot of gift card theft.
We would eat the loss.
Yeah, but they kept their commissions.
But they wouldn't exactly. At least, even though it's a nominal fee, the royalties should be rebated back to us. There was no revenue.
And they never fixed the system, and they made a lot of money on that. And they would have this thing about their vision and their values about excellence. Excellence doesn't belong in the same sentence as we know what excellence is. We had doctors working for us. We had accredited sleep labs. We know what clinical excellence is. Yes. They come nowhere close to it. They told us there was a massage therapist shortage. We were kind of like understood, well, because there's so much business that you're going to have, you can't keep up with the demand. No, nobody wants to work for Massage Envy in our neighborhood. And our regional directors, they don't care. They have their therapists. They're not sharing, so they make money off of us.
And then what's the model? Nori, or Jeff, if you could tell me a little bit about the model. So you were a franchisee. You had 2 locations. What's the responsibility of this regional director? Do they have their own franchise locations, and they're also providing a service to you?
They had their own location. They had one. I'm guessing that they got a location, and then eventually became regional directors. So they kept and we would then have monthly co-op meetings, meaning that everybody within that region would have meetings with them, ostensibly to share information, sometimes just to get beaten up. I'm not really sure, other than to justify the monthly co-op fees that we were paying on top of the franchise fees. What benefit?
This is a co-op. It's friendly, but at the end of the day, they're competing with you because there's too many.
Well, there's too many meetings, and I would meet my fellow franchisees, and my fellow franchisees are sweethearts. They're just from all backgrounds. Business people, people just trying to figure out what my next investment is going to be. Some people eventually we started talking to us, says we're not coming to the meeting anymore. They can tell us whatever they want, but there's really no value to be gained there. But if I can, I'd like to go back to some of the whole process in terms of, we talked about the vendors. The vendors are all pre-selected for build out from corporate. Why I need to deal with a vendor that's based in Atlanta who essentially subs out the work in Los Angeles is beyond me.
He doesn't understand the municipality code, the contractors, subcontractors.
Right. They get subcontractors who we found out later when we consulted with technical people that their installs were probably 1.5, even 2 times as much as what they would have done of that.
Are there kickbacks along the way?
We can't. I'm sure there are, but I can't verify it, so I can't. Okay. I can't state that black and white.
Nothing's clean here with these people.
But I mean, there was one point where it was called Horizon River. I don't mind saying their name, but they just kept on billing me and billing. And finally, I said, you know what? I don't owe you any more money. And then they brought in the franchise corporation, right? And all of a sudden, I'm getting a call from Arizona. And I said, I'm not paying them anymore. Okay, here's what I've paid, and here's what was agreed upon, and I don't know why. And they can't even document what was installed. They had to come back several times. And eventually, they saw, I said, what, are you going to take their side and not let me open? This is like, this is like part of the stress and the tension.
You can't build a business with this.
Right. It's
the
like
level of, so we made it very clear, and you tell the directors this, and they know this. The people at our age that are going into this business do not want to be hands-on.
Yeah,
don't worry.
Semi-absentee.
Correct. First year, you learn the business, and then it runs on its own, and you bring in a manager.
Right.
That's what you were sold.
Oh God, don't even ask what we were sold.
And believe me, we are not passive people.
Yeah.
So we did.
You've had regular retail operating businesses, even in the complex medical space. So
but we were very much hands-on. We were definitely putting in 50 to 70-hour weeks, each of us, and making sure and going out and marketing and going out to apartment complexes and retail businesses in the area. And going out to Netflix and whatever the local corporations were in the Los Angeles, and going to Chamber of Commerce, and just basically always, even on the street, handing out cards. That's what we were doing.
And the marketing. The thing is that we pay so much for marketing. I remember telling my regional director, I'm like, why aren't we getting business? She said, well, you still have to do your own marketing. And I'm sitting there with, the whole reason we did this is because we had our sleep lads. We did everything, our marketing, our everything. We don't need a partner to tell us what we need to be doing so we could pay them.
Right.
And the only thing that we did par excellence, and I really have to give that credit to my husband and to my partners, and even a little bit to me, but the locations and the leases that we were able to have, because the places they were finding us and what they were finding us were so crazy. And this is an area that we knew very well. And we said, why would we pay these leases? This is like,
what were they proposing, like in terms of monthly rent? Like the spots that they found, like over $10K a month?
$1,000 a month people were paying rent for these tiny little.
But wait, if I may, so like, like the technology vendor was out of Atlanta. The real estate broker was out of Atlanta, and he's basically going to tell us. So he's showing us stuff at $4 and $5 a foot per month. On the East Coast, that would equate to $48 to $60.
That's pricey.
And we're finding stuff at $2 a foot and $2.25. And we said, this is where we want to be located. Meanwhile, we're thinking he's this incredible negotiator, and he's going to be negotiating the best terms, and he's really negotiating his commission.
Exactly. He wants to get 3% of the contract value or whatever, or 4%. And
right. I mean, in hindsight, he should have done an initial term of 5 years with a 5-year option. Instead, we were basically put into 10 years, but we were so optimistic. We thought, wow, 10 years, we're going to make so much money. We'll have resale value. Our idea was to build it up 3 to 5 years and then sell it at multiple of EBITDA, which was what we were told. Of those clinics that I told you about, none of them sold for not even a multiple of 1 of EBITDA. And they all sold for definitely a fraction, or just closed down a fraction of what their costs were, or just closed out, period. And each of those franchisees were just happy to walk away and not have that aggravation. So their vendors, their real estate broker, their site location, none of that was to the standards where it should have been. The build out.
Oh, even their marketing materials. They force us to buy marketing materials from Georgia, and we're like double taxed. We're taxed on the shipping. And I'm like, I would tell my regional director, well, I can just go across it. I have a vendor. I could do it for a fraction of the cost. Right. No, you have to use this. They know better. And they use their own bully tactics, because we were trying to explain to them that we wanted. I remember we were downtown and we created such a beautiful clinic, and we tried to show them how things were needed to be done. And we were giving some pushback on some of the ideas. And our regional director was just like, you know what? I've opened 30 clinics. I know what I'm doing. You need to be quiet. Okay. Even when we quit, and they knew how much we had hurt and how much we lost and everything. Our regional director didn't discontinue our membership in his own little state organization called Mikafa. So while this is going on, we're still getting billed for membership. So we call them and we say, hey, look, we're not in business anymore. Please cancel us. And we have been out of business for these past few months. We would like a refund. So they went to the regional director. No, they're not getting a refund.
So this is just like a direct deposit? They're just taking money out of your account?
Everything with them. They have their claws. You know what an octopus is like? There's a claw every which way, you know?
There's a lot. And by the way, once we're operational, we find out later our technology fees are probably 1.5 times that of other. So I'll give you an example. I looked at either Hand and Stone or Massage Heights, and I think their monthly technology was $495. Ours all in was anywhere between $1,300 to $1,500. Why? I mean, how much technology do you need?
And it's not even good technology.
It's like I'm not building a Tesla.
Everything was breaking around with our technology. We had to have extra training for all the workarounds.
Right.
And we're talking about hours and hours of extra, and you can't build a business like
That's
this.
a whole other discussion. When they rolled out a new point of sale, the latest and newest version, but it wasn't beta tested, and it just failed.
They just rolled out to hundreds of franchisees without testing it.
Right.
We lost accounts.
We lost clients. Clients were either double billed or not billed. There was just so much going on, and there was just utter chaos. We had staff walk off and say, "We're not dealing with this anymore. You guys deal with it."
So I mean, it sounds like with franchising, you want to save your time and save your money, but using the octopus analogy, where some franchisors are picking up pennies, but they're also helping you out. Like they're picking up hundreds of dollars from you and not giving you any support.
Not at all. It's an adversarial relationship. They have their favorites. They have their little groups that they give special deals to. And the thing is, if you're in trouble, it's all your fault. They're not going to be there. And what's very, very sad is that had they shown a little bit of competency and a little bit of care and had done it right, this would have been good for everybody, because the market is robust. We have competitors in our area doing very, very well. They didn't even have to be super creative. They just had to be ethical, honest, and competent.
Right.
Some people would have hit the jackpot. Others would have done okay, but it would never have been anywhere like this. But they're not, and they're not ethical. And I really thought that these people, I used to tell people as this was going on, and when we would talk to franchisees, we were like, wow, we can't believe they get away with this. And I would say, people go to jail for so much less. For so much less.
Right.
But they're not rich.
And it's like, and I had conversations with a senator who did a really bang up job doing an
analysis. Ramasto out of Nevada?
Yes. She did.
I saw her report. Massage Envy was
did a
really
very good job, but and I don't believe in regulations and all of these things. I understand the opposing view, but this is such abuse. We've also spoken to local government here. There is ongoing investigations in the state. They know, and they know who the players are.
These are like labor violations. If you're mandating that someone is running a business for 10 years and they're working 60 to 70 hours a week and they're getting basically effectively less than minimum wage, it's like, where does that line blur? And I'm all for free market.
The contractor, so they don't have to worry about that. It's our business. So
so anything that would go wrong, well, you're independent. And
if you're independent, then you should be able to make independent decisions, right?
No. And even people, and that's the other thing that's really sad, because we got out and we were really damaged, but we survived. But we had people that would call us from different parts of the country trying to get out and being just so afraid. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear.
Because the franchisees, like I say, they're sweet people. And even after they're out, they don't want to go public. They just want it to be behind them. And the only reason we're doing what we're doing is to protect the future. That's really what it's all about. There's nothing else
I can relate to that. I mean, I have my drawer of demand cease and desist letters when I talk about franchises in a way that the franchisor doesn't like, but it's based on facts. It's based on the numbers. But yeah, there's a lot of people that won't like it. But I think along with you, people deserve to know, and that if we could jointly, avoid a suicide or some crazy medical event, it's our role to spread that information so people don't fall in to some trap and they're
This is a
oversold
trap.
some opportunity.
This is a trap. Even when you want to, they say they're going to find you buyers, which they don't. Even when you're trying to get out, they sabotage it with bringing in their buyers. Don't even ask about that one.
Well, I will elaborate just so your viewers can understand. You understand what we're talking about. The country is almost divided up into sort of favored equity groups, so that if a clinic comes up for sale, Massage Envy has first rights of refusal, which they then designate to ABC Spa.
So they assign to some private equity backed franchisee that has 10 to 100 locations.
Right.
And so instead of spending $800K to open a studio, they can pick it up for like $50K, $100K,
right. Or less. It got so bad that some of them would be telling franchisees would be calling me that they're doing them a favor by taking over the lease.
I mean, Patrick, if we would have known we could buy an existing unit for half of what it costs to develop, and it would have even a small membership already built into it of 350, we would have jumped at that. Exactly. Why do we need to reinvent the wheel? I'm a big
fan of looking at resales before the build out, just because you know what you're getting into. And we haven't run the study yet for Massage Envy, but a lot of franchises, the resale value is significantly less than the initial investment. And it sounds like it's that case with Massage Envy pretty much across the board. But that's a lot of information that it's just like, does this opportunity make sense? And it's hard to get that data, but it's a nice barometer to be like, well, why would I start a business if it's like the resale value is like half or just at a fraction?
Right.
Because they lie.
It's like I buy a new car I buy a new car at $100,000. I drive it off the lot, and it's worth $50,000. Now the car is going to eventually give me some value and not aggravation because I'm going to drive it. But here, it's not only worth $50,000 or less, but it's giving me
drive it when you want, not driving it 70 hours a week.
Exactly. And I can state without hesitation that in our area, obviously I don't know the country, in our area of Los Angeles, Southern California, of the units in the last 5 years, I don't think anybody sold at anywhere near the initial cost of what it costs to build or develop. And that's
I'm going to dig into those numbers because we have data on like SBA backed transactions. So we can see like if someone did it through SBA loan. But I imagine these private equity groups, they're not doing SBA funding. They're above that. They're going with equity or debt that they find themselves. So I imagine like
anything of what we're paying, they're getting discounts every which way and favoritism. But we had a fellow franchisee, a young man with 3 little children, and he had to bankrupt his business and leave. And to show you how callous these people are, nobody called to see how he's doing. Months later, the regional director texted him. They were interviewing one of his massage therapists. They wanted a reference. They wanted to know what his thoughts were. Can you believe this?
Empathy wasn't one of the core values at Massage Envy.
No, not at all.
There was only one core value that they really stuck to, and that was consistency. They were very consistent with how they behaved. You already knew that anything that came up, because we had, I think, 3 skin lines that we were having to buy, and now they were trying to push a 4th one, where many of us at that point just said, really? No. So basically, you see all your capital sitting on the shelves instead of growing your business. It's sitting on the shelves
Inventory.
In the form of aging product.
It's aging product, and you have to get rid of it. Specific example: Murad had a great acne skincare line.
Right.
For some reason, they said we're no longer going to be supporting that, and they discontinued the acne skin line. Maybe a year or 2 later, they try to introduce proactive acne skincare line. Why? We don't know.
And this is years after disparaging Proactive because Murad was so much better. All of a sudden, Murad Proactive their acne is better than Obagi, which we were buying. No, we don't want to use that one. And we don't want to use Jan Marini because why? No, we need a third line.
And by the way, Proactive was very popular on the infomercials, and they were really driving a lot of business. And basically, at their corporate headquarters, they decided, well, how do we do brick and mortars? How do we get like another avenue of revenue? Massage Envy comes along and says, we're here. But the franchisees fought back on that. Some of them bought into it. We and a lot of in our area said, done. We're not taking on another skin line.
Right.
And we're not taking on Proactive. And even when we do Proactive, they're not going to, if somebody goes on their site, they're not going to refer us. We're basically acting as their shill. We're going to be selling their product, but they're not going to be cross-promoting. Hey, go to the store on Van Nuys.
There was never cross-promotion.
Drive service business. Yeah, I mean, they should be helping out to drive clients to you.
You would go to these sites, whether it be any site, because I would go and check, and you would see the suppliers would have all the places where they could send people to
Nordstrom or wherever retail.
Right.
But Massage Envy would not be on the list.
Never, because they don't care. They don't care. The only reason we were able to push back was because at this point there was an association. But the CEO, the former one and the current one, when they saw this association being formed and the complaints, they would say, think there's no merit to anything and we will fight them. I'm like, no, there is merit. Why aren't they listening? Why aren't we in this together? Why aren't we this? Why isn't there any partnership? Why does it have to be such a win-lose situation?
Yeah. Franchises, I mean, it can only last so long. Even the franchisor's profitability, it can't be sustained. Like you look at Jersey Mike's, Chick-fil-A, 50% to the family, the Cathy family, that's worth $14 billion. And then 50% profits to the operator. And this is an operator that I interviewed a Chick-fil-A franchisee last week. Started as a crew member, and now he's making $200K to $400K. Right. So, the billionaire is getting even richer. Good for them. The day-to-day operator's not doing bad. $200K to $400K. So it's like everyone growing together.
It can be a win-win.
It could have been. It could have been really great. But the CEO at the time, I probably should say his name, but he needed to show a big return on the investment, and he was turning the company around, and the investors were very happy. They don't care. So, and as you see, they're doing very well. He's gone. Of course, he had some kind of sexual conduct, so he's gone. And now they have his prodigy. She doesn't know anything. And she spits the same garbage, but at least there's an association that limits her ability to do anything. But I don't know how this is going to be sustainable. But they don't. They made their money. They could have made more, right. But they made their money, and you almost wonder if they're in the business of destroying people. I don't get them.
It just doesn't make sense to operate at a above 50% profit margin for years over years. Like you're doing that at some cost to society.
Well, it's legal.
I mean, like even in their national advertising, and eventually some people opted out because they saw no benefit, but they had to fight it. That association did fight it, and so they have to put their revenue dollars into something else. But we never saw any benefit of it in terms of actual clientele coming through our doors saying, "Oh, I saw your ad on TV, and that's why I'm here to sign up for that special." Apart from that, there's no transparency. We don't know we found out at one point where some of those ad dollars were actually paying staff at Massage Envy as opposed to corporate.
It's big no.
As opposed to
salaries.
Right. And let me tell you, it's like an ad on cable TV for 30 seconds at 1:30 in the morning. It's not going to drive, Patrick or Jeff into Massage Envy the next day for a service. Yeah. That's really it. Maybe a national campaign with McDonald's is going to have me salivating for a hamburger. Everything was just this like complex, beyond complexity. And it really shouldn't be. Business can be simple and profitable, and you just have good people. And the franchisees they're really good, hardworking business people. They put mortgages on their houses. They did SBA loans. And I'm not here to besmirch, individuals
and some
at
of them
corporate,
are making money.
Yeah.
But these are in different certain locations.
So suburban Ohio, where your rent's $3,000, probably makes the business model couldn't make
and
sense.
if they had established a good membership over the years and a loyal membership, and they were good operators, if they had good therapists, but that's not the case. That has not been our experience. But there are people that probably are still making a living, but we haven't seen it.
There was a woman in our training class. She opened up in Massachusetts. She actually did make money, but how did she do that? She started eliminating staff, and she took on their positions. So she was doing 50 to 70-hour weeks, and she was happy. She says, last year I took out 50,000. Last year I took out 70,000. Oh, this year I'm not taking out anything, or I'm taking out. She says, I am not renewing when my like I think you renew every 10 years. She goes, I'm not renewing. I'm out of here. If I can find somebody to buy this thing, but I'm out of here.
But this is a success.
And that was considered a success to basically sink $750,000 and then work so many hours to pull out $60,000 a year. All right. Wow. I mean, each of the 4 partners, we're all making 6 figures in sales. Exactly. When we had our sales position, we were each making 6 figures when we ran our sleep diagnostic centers.
Yeah. Sometimes even more.
But now it's like we're told we're bad operators. We're told we're going to be litigated for this, litigated. I mean, it's like
there's a lot of shame that goes into it, and I think sadly, talking to so many franchisees, like people, they mortgaged their house, SBA loan. They told all their friends they're going into this Massage Envy. Right. And there's a bit of a lag between from the time you get naked in terms of showing the financial issues. It could be a month, but most likely it's more like 2 years, 3 years into the process. And at that time you're stuck in it and other people are joining, and it's something that festers.
They give statistics of the number of clinics that they own, but that's not truthful because they don't let clinics close. They don't let clinics merge. So it shows, if let's say you closed a clinic, you still have to pay for the server and all these things. So it looks like an active clinic. They do that number.
We see the temporary closures. There's a big fitness studio that has F45 fitness, that all these temporary closures, and they should be marked as permanent on Google. Everyone's saying it's closed, it's not temporary. So you see games, sadly, with franchising, and especially when they have outside investors, whether it's traded on the stock exchange like F45 or private equity backed, where there's limited partners that have invested in that fund. They need to show, that their investment worked out. So for the next fund and the next time they knock on the door to get more capital, they're able to get more capital to invest in other franchises.
Yeah, they lie. They lie like crazy. Left, right, and center.
The West Hollywood clinic next to it, like the neighborhood just over from us in 1.5 miles, was shown as temporarily closed for better than 9 months. And when I would call their number just out of curiosity, it would refer to a different clinic owned by the same owner. It says, we're just doing a remodel. A remodel takes all of 5 days. Yeah. So that remodel of 5 days lasted until 9 months, and now eventually the website says permanently closed.
That's sad, yeah. It's deceptive to prospective franchisees, current franchisees that are deciding if they're going to open a second location. Yeah. On that, actually, were you contractually obligated to open up that second location? Because it seemed like with the first location, things weren't going so hot. What led to keep on continuing with the second site?
So
I have to go, but we bought 2 at the same time because we're 2 families, so we as partners, and so that's what we did it. And because we were able to get 2 prime locations with unbelievable terms, we couldn't, we couldn't, we thought with our background, they said all you need to do is be a hands-on manager for a year. And we thought this is a piece of cake compared to what we did before. I mean, exactly. Before we were dealing with illnesses, we were dealing with doctors.
And we're dealing with the government and getting approvals and Medicare and all kinds of, accreditations and vetting that we needed to do. And we met all of them without any issue.
Well, this is piece of cake.
Right. You opened them in parallel, the 2 locations basically back to back.
They were open probably
in parallel, 6 months apart.
9 months apart, exactly. Yeah.
The one location downtown, I don't know if it's profitable, but it's always done very well. Even for us, we couldn't make any money, but because of all the sucking and everything. But
so the top line revenue was good,
and because of our debt on it.
What?
You were making good revenue from
Yeah,
the business, but in terms of
Yes.
earnings, what you took out was minimal.
Right, the way everything was structured, and then of course dealing with California laws and the fact that we have to pay minimum wage for downtime, and it kept on increasing, and there were just a lot of challenges. And the truth of the matter is, there's really very little time to growing the business. We are just dodging bullets, putting out fires constantly from every angle. From every angle.
Also, but by the way, downtown does not have any competing Massage Envies anywhere near it. All right, and
so it's like the perfect. It was like the perfect example. Amazing site, great build out, and no competition nearby. But no even with that,
Massage Envy
earnings weren't great.
We negotiated a much bigger territory there, so that was our second one, which we negotiated a little after our first one.
Nice. And we were smarter the second time around because we realized that they were not going to help us. And we were,
and then also downtown is very much growing in terms of finally having a large residential population.
I've seen that the last trip to LA, like you see nice residential towers popping up, and
right.
It's
and the area needed services. So yeah, that was downtown.
Well, we've unpacked a lot. Whether you're a prospective franchisee listening, a current franchisee, a franchisor that wants to do right by your franchisees, we've gone through a lot. Do you two have any concluding thoughts for those that are listening or watching us on YouTube today?
Don't do it. And if
my wife is very direct and to the point, and God bless her.
Yeah, I like
she has
it.
Great business acumen.
One thing I would suggest is that make sure that you have solid clad exit strategies. So if that means your lease, the franchise, the location, whatever it is, make sure your exit strategies are solid and that you're protected. And also another thing I would suggest is if they tell you to buy insurance, make sure you know what you're getting, because we found out that a lot of the insurance that they put us in was not good once we left. There's a thing about claim insurance and this insurance. Oh, wow. They put us in the worst, which meant now we had to buy tail insurance, and you don't even know. So I would tell people that make sure you know your labor laws, and make sure you know the insurances that you're buying, and make sure that you know what is life after it, should you need to leave. What is life going to be like?
What's your exit strategy going in?
That's because I hope we're not going to get now some kind of nasty lawsuit because
I'm not worried about it.
We disparage them. But somebody has to be out there for the good guy. You're like the bad guy every which way, because you're the cruel capitalist business owner on this side, and then you're the poor little victim from the big capitalist monster on that side. It's like so be very, very careful. I love
what you're saying with exit, because a lot of people don't think about that. After 3 years, if it doesn't work out, like, are you willing for the upside to have the downside after 3 years if it doesn't work out? And if that answer is no, don't do it.
And what happens, very critical, if you have the honeymoon period where you're making a lot of money, and guess what? Something, either a new buyer takes over, or it's no longer flavor of the month, or you have new competitors that have entered into, and now you're not making any of that money. What then? So who are your business partners here?
Right. And just to piggyback on what my wife said,
and I have to go.
She has to go, but as far
as bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Mary.
As far as she's saying, don't do it. And basically, look at the EBITDA of the clinics in the last 5 years. Look at what they've sold at. Has anybody recouped any of their initial investment? Look at the areas. If you're going to buy something, maybe buy an established business, but you won't have a shot at that. Only their approved equity groups have a shot at basically the existing clinics. Don't develop all this debt with SBA and everything else. The profit margins are not there. If a client comes in my door at $70 an hour for a service, and I've got to pay my massage therapist $25, and I've got to pay my rent, and I've got to pay my utilities, and I've got to pay, et cetera, et cetera. If I'm making, you
gotta pay yourself.
Am I making $8 or $10 on a service? If that, I've got to do a lot of business just to make that profitable. So
And a lot of these people, if you've accumulated that capital, you're self-made. It wasn't like inherited. You're smart enough to do something else and allocate your capital and resources to something that's more profitable and more enjoyable.
I mean, I should have spent the last 3 years going back to being a mortgage broker,
Exactly.
with way less hours, way less stress, and just knowing who my clientele are.
More overhead.
But again, it was sold as like down long term, almost like a passive investment. Once it's on its own, it basically, I don't know anybody, with exception of one operator in Southern California or two, I don't know anybody who can do that.
It's very difficult.
Everybody's in the trenches every day.
Overall, I recommend you're all in, at least for the first 2 years, and then you could look at, semi-absentee, but obviously it has to be with the right model. Well, Jeff, this has been awesome. We've gone over, typically these are 30 minutes, 40 minutes. We're hitting almost an hour. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone listening today is going to learn a lot, the do's and don'ts to being a successful franchisee, as well as franchisor, and having a system that cultivates and fosters a great community so that everyone can win.
I agree. Patrick, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you for doing this and providing that service to, potential franchisees of every kind of business model. We need to be informed. We're not stupid. We have money. We have capital. We have a desire to succeed. And just to put up with that kind of frustration and so much else, so much negativity is really not called for. So I hope people do their due diligence.
Yeah, my hope is that franchising can be elevated overall, and the top franchisors get more franchisees, and the poor performing franchisors get less franchisees, but it brings up the whole industry.
Right. Okay, I agree.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for your time.